Okay, just to put the record straight, I'm not a lord, even though it's Andrew. It's not Andrew Lloyd Webber, if only. So, as Josh said, I work in the Microsoft UK business, where I spearhead our indie game development outreach. To also be very clear, I'm not part of the Xbox team. So if you think about the way that Microsoft goes to market for its gaming, you've obviously got the Xbox team focused on titles publishing either on the platform itself or indeed on Xbox Live, Arcade. And then you've got all of you guys, the indie game developers, and that's who I want to talk to, and that's who I talk to in the UK. Right, Ant and Dec. Hopefully Ant and Dec have made it over here to Ireland. Why have I put them up here? Well, really, as you can see, AJ and I are taking up the next 90 minutes. Like all good comedy duos, Laurel and Hardy, my personal favourite, Eric and Ernie, there's always the guy that's the butt of the jokes, and he's what I call the straight guy. That's me. Then there's the comedian who gets all the laughs. That's AJ. So at the end of my 45 minutes, there'll probably be some polite applause, and thank you very much, that was very interesting. And then for AJ, it'll be, we love you, AJ, yay! Don't forget, it's the straight guy, me, that sets up the comedian. So remember that when you do the applause, hopefully at the end of my section. So what am I going to talk about over the next 45 minutes? I'm going to give you an awful lot of data and facts, which is what I see as going on in the market right now. Now, this has come from three analyst firms. You're probably familiar with some of them, Distimo, Flurry, and GameTrack, or Ipsos. These aren't all of the slides, because in the interest of time and in the interest of your attention, I've just taken some of what I think the most relevant ones. If you want the entire slide decks, then I've spoken with Caroline, and I'll make those available, and they'll go onto the site where all the materials will be, and obviously you can go in there and download and use those. They're all publicly available. So I'll spend some time talking about what the games industry looks like right now, both globally, and then specifically around mobile game development, and then the UK scene. Then I'm going to spend some time talking about the journey that I've been on and Microsoft have been on in the UK, by way of sort of talking about what I see as the opportunities and what I've seen actually happen in the short time that we've been engaged with the indie devs in the UK. And I'll also give you an example of one particular game and startup studio that I've worked with very successfully in the last few months. And then finally, I'm going to put my crystal ball, well, not put it on, but put it on the table, and just give you my thoughts on what the one next big thing is that's coming down the road for gaming. And let's see how that sits with you guys. So that's what I'm going to do over the next 45 minutes. A little bit about me. 15 years in marketing management roles at banks, can't you tell? Financial services marketing. And then I joined Microsoft, working for the financing part of Microsoft within worldwide licensing and pricing. So far, so boring. And then I joined developer and platform evangelism in the UK as their business manager, which means that basically I looked after all of the strategic planning and all the day-to-day operational aspects of that division. Still, not that interesting. Down at the bottom, where things get interesting, 8 months only as the UK marketing lead for indie game developers. And it's been absolutely brilliant. So I can actually pinpoint the day that Microsoft UK started to talk about mobile game development on its Windows and Windows Phone platforms. And that's Develop, which some of you may go to in Brighton, which is the largest UK indie game conference in the year. We went there, and that was our first. And we went there not knowing what the reaction was going to be, and that was our first outing into this space. So that's why I know it's exactly 8 months. And I'm looking forward to July this year, which will be our year anniversary when we go back to Develop. So, final point, the picture behind, those are the sort of people that I used to deal with in most of my marketing career, so banking executives. These are the folk that I deal with now. And obviously you'll recognize one of them, so it's AJ and Craig. And this is the sort of stuff that I hear. And you'll probably hear a bit more of that as well. Okay. The big picture, as I call it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with globally what's going on. Now, this is research we've just commissioned, so it's fresh off the page from Newzoo and Distimo, who Newzoo worked in partnership on this. It's a bit of an eye candy slide. This is what I draw your attention to, and I'm just going to walk. The traditional markets, North America and Europe, you can see from a revenue perspective, 22 billion for North America, near enough 19 billion in Europe. So this is gaming all up across all types of gaming. That's great, and that's a big number, and that's a big opportunity. Look at the compound annual growth rate, though. It's 1%, plus 1% in North America and plus 3% in Europe. Look at Asia-Pac. It's a big number, 22.2 billion, but look at this compound annual growth rate, 13%. So read into that what you will, but I think it's plainly obvious. Yes, there's a lot of money in the North American and Europe markets in respect to gaming, but in terms of aggressive growth, and it probably won't come as a surprise to a lot of you, Asia-Pac, that's where it's at. There's big growth in Middle East, but the revenue number is very, very low at 1 billion. Let's break that down into particular gaming segments, because that was gaming all up. So that takes that big number and starts to break it down here, as you can see. And I've ringed these three, social networks, mobile devices, and MMOs, because these are the big drivers in terms of not just growth, but revenue. So you can see here, social networks just under 4 billion with a 5% growth rate. Mobile devices, mobile gaming, 9 billion with a 32% annual growth rate. MMOs, 13.6 billion, not surprising. We all know they make a stack of money. But again, with a 21% growth rate. And if you look at the other examples of gaming, you can see, yes, there's some big billions attached, but the growth rate isn't there. And in fact, in some of them, they're slightly decreasing. So if you think about where you are now or where you're going as a studio or a student, this would seem to be, in terms of the gaming, a good opportunity. Let's move that on. So I'm going to go specifically into mobile gaming, which obviously is, I think, where most of you guys probably are, and it's certainly where I am. We know it's 9 billion. We know that already. And we know it's grown by 32% annual growth. 500 million mobile players, and that's just exponentially going up, particularly being driven out of the Asia-Pac countries, with 175 million paying players, which is fairly important, as we know. We'd like to get some money from it. From a sort of category perspective, 33% of all downloads, 1/3 of all downloaded apps to smartphones and tablets are games. So it is the single biggest category of apps that are downloaded and obviously played. Interestingly, it's not on this slide, but KPMG did a piece of research where they estimated that games actually pulled through an additional 50% of apps. And the reason they say that is because you go onto your device to play a game, and whilst you're there, you'll dive into other productivity or tool apps and use them. So it's an important category, not just for you, but for the whole app ecosystem. Money, 66% of all money comes from game apps on smartphones and tablets, which is not surprising at all, because if you look at the top 20 revenue-earning games on iOS or Android, a good proportion of them are games from game developers. So that's sort of the big picture, the global picture, if you will. I'm going to drill a little bit further now into the mobile space specifically. So change of slide format. This is Flurry, so thank you very much, Flurry, for letting me use your slides. Phenomenal growth. You can see here it starts March 2009 for iOS and Android through to September 2012, and you can see the growth. Of course, the interesting thing here is, and not surprisingly, obviously iOS has grown up to 700,000 apps in store in September, but look at the Android growth. It has rocketed, and it's only just behind iOS. So they're catching up fast. So it'll be interesting if we trend that forward. I can see very soon a scenario where Android will outpace Apple in terms of number of apps in store. But the big numbers at the end there, 700,000 apps in the Apple store, 675,000 apps in the Android store. Double-edged sword, really, which is probably not lost on you guys. How on earth do you get discovered, your app, amongst 700,000? And of course, it makes discoverability that much more challenging when you've got that sheer number of apps. Of course, the quid pro quo is that means you've got a very vibrant store ecosystem. with obviously a number of consumer eyeballs on it. So it's a double-edged sword. But I would imagine no great surprise to you guys that it's a phenomenal growth. But the Android one surprised me. Okay, so let's take that a little bit further and just think about where are the growth countries. So the top countries right now by active devices you can see in millions. Surprise, surprise, the US, 181 million active Android and Apple devices, and China not far behind at 167. Look at the drop away. UK 35, all the way down to poor old Spain there, down at 14 million. But where are the growth countries? Where are the ones that are growing the quickest? China. So right now, it's the second largest in the world in terms of number of active devices. But look at the growth rate, nearly 300%. What an opportunity, huge opportunity. And then we get into some really interesting countries, Vietnam, Colombia, Chile, and so on, that are showing phenomenal growth, but their base is quite low. But it goes to that whole Asia-Pac piece. So let's take this a step further, and let's look specifically at the category mix. Smartphones on the left here, tablets on the right. Games, 40%, roughly 39% on smartphones of the number of apps that sit within the categories. Look at tablets, though. 67% of apps on the tablets are games. That's just amazing. When you think that overall 33% of apps downloaded are games, but tablets are running at over double that level. And then you look at the next band, social networking on the phones, surprise, surprise, at 24% and only 10% on tablets, and then you get down to sort of single digits. So nothing this underlines from a devices perspective, whether it be a phone, whether it be a tablet, whether it be, if we think about Windows, PC, laptop, games rule. Okay, that's the number of apps that make up the categories. What about the monetization? Let's have a quick look here. This is 2011, so roughly just over a year ago. 82% of the apps were generating under 25 cents of revenue. This is based on, as you can see, the top 1,000 grossing games. And then there's this big green section there, which is the 25 cents to 75 cents. Fast forward 1 year to 2012, the under 25s has dropped, under 25 cents has dropped to 53%. But look at the growth in the green, 32% between 25 cents and 75 cents, and 15% over 75 cents. So two things I take away from that. First of all, people are spending more, which is great. But also, developers have got much smarter about how to monetize their apps and how to get their customers through various mechanisms to spend more, which is clearly an important thing to do. So that's the sort of monetization view. And bear in mind, these are global numbers. We haven't got to the UK-specific stuff. How about loyalty? It's one thing to install an app. How loyal are you to that app? How long does that app stay on the devices? This is a hell of a busy chart. I've tried to put boxes round, but you can see here along the bottom, we have retention over 90 days. So from the point someone installs an app, at what point 90 days later are they still using that app? And then up here you've got frequency of use per week. Social games. Lots of use, but actually the retention is roughly 30% over 90 days. So you're losing nearly 2/3 of the users over that time period. Single-player gaming, which is probably what we think more about mobile devices, actually the retention's much better. It's around, 45%, but the frequency of use is down at just below 4 times per week. So actually, single-player games in many ways are a better fit, but of course the sweet spot is the top right, number 1, which only has communication and news in it, and news is very marginal. That's where we need, not to want, we need games to be there. We need to see great retention over the 90 days, because the first 90 days are felt to be that sort of tipping point. If you go beyond that, typically they're loyal to your game. And of course, we want them to use it a lot, because if they use it a lot, they'll retain it and they'll spend more. So that's the sweet spot you want to be in. Right now, we're not there, at least according to Flurry. Let's take that down just to the game categories specifically. And what are the sweet spots in terms of game categories? And I've ringed them to make it easier. Again, 90-day retention at the bottom, frequency of use. You can see here that slots, management sims, and social turn-based games are the most popular. based on the Flurry analytics. So that's where you want your game to be. Am I saying you should go and chase those categories of games? Of course not. But if you can find a way to get your category of game in that box number 1, you've hit the sweet spot. They're playing a game a lot, and they're playing it beyond 90 days. Okay, so that's the global picture. Now to the UK picture. This was the best picture I could find for the UK. I thought that's classic UK lady eating her ice cream in the winter. Right. These are slides from Ipsos. And Ipsos produced a report called GameTrack. They produce this primarily for the traditional consoles, Sony's, Xboxes, and so on. They do it quarterly, so this is the very latest. It was only released last week. And again, I've got the full deck, which I'll provide to Caroline. This is just a sort of snapshot. Okay, so again, there's a lot going on here. This is UK only. Let me just explain quickly the mechanics they use to get here. They have a sample base of 2,000. So every quarter, they physically and over the telephone interview 2,000 folk in the UK to arrive at these numbers. And obviously, quarter on quarter, they can show the trending. So this is, you can see here, Q3 2012 versus the previous quarter of 2011. What's growing? That's the key thing. And obviously, what's declining by the same token. So we can see here, browser game sites are increasing. They were 6%. They're up to 8%. So these are the types of gaming that these 2,000 sample base are doing. Online, up 1% from 18 to 19%, quarter on quarter. Apps, up 2% from 12 to 14. Packaged, your traditional Xbox 360, Sony, PS3, maybe PS4 scene, down 4% from 26 to 22%. Now, this isn't revenue, just to be clear. This is percentage of play, not percentage of revenues. And then overall, video gaming is down 3% in the UK from 38 to 35%. So they've extrapolated that sample to this equates to roughly 20 million people in the UK are active gamers. So what's the takeaway here? Clearly apps is growing and is a good place to be, and online as well. Apps is growing slightly more aggressively at 2% versus the online of 1%. And then obviously the browser game sites is a small increase as well. Okay, these are the age demographics. So what age are people playing particular types of games? This is packaged games. So again, you can see here that roughly, or let's just say it's the 11 to 14-year-olds are the peak for packaged games, and 6 to 10-year-olds aren't that far off. But look at the tail away as you get into the 15 to 24 age group. It drops, and then it just drops away down to the 45 plus years old. So what does this mean if you are developing packaged? From a sheer opportunity, it's your 6 to 14-year-olds, your absolute sweet spot in terms of gameplay. Let's do it for apps. It's actually not too different. The percentages might be different, but the actual curve is pretty much the same. Again, you've got the biggest users in that 6 to 15-year-old group. And what's more interesting, look at the gap here. So the dotted line is Q4 2011, Q3 2012. It's quite a growth in terms of apps for in the children. And then when you get to the 25 on, it's pretty much flat. And then just for completeness, online, again, same. Higher, 75% playing online, slightly up quarter on quarter. But again, you've got that sweet spot of the 6 to 15-year-olds are the real people that are consuming games on a regular basis. So what devices are they playing on? Tablets show the greatest growth, 4% to 7%. So it's only a 3% growth, but that's quarter on quarter. Portables, it says actually has gone up, but it's actually gone down from 12% to 11%. Smartphones and iPods, up 1%. Computers, down fractionally, 2%. Consoles, down 3%. And again, we know that overall there's a slight dip in terms of the overall number from 38% to 35%. So what does this tell us? Well, it tells us what all the other slides are telling us. Tablets, smartphones, portables, seems to be the growth areas, certainly in the UK, quarter on quarter. Now, the next slide is quite an interesting one, at least it was for me. So, what they've done here, they've looked at the two category of ages. So over on the right-hand side there, you've got the 6 to 10-year-olds, and over here you've got the 11-year-olds and up on the left-hand side. Excuse me. And then what they've attempted to do is overlay the different types of gaming they're doing to identify that spot in the middle of playing on more than one device or more than one platform. You can see here that the 11 pluses, only 6% actually play all the different platforms. But look at the 6 to 10-year-olds, 31% play cross-platform. So phone, online, and traditional packaged. Very important to understand, therefore, that when you're engaging with your audience, particularly in the 6 to 10-year-olds, their expectation is they can play across different platforms. They're not loyal to one. What's even more interesting is those 6 to 10-year-olds will become adults. And I wonder, a few years from now, when GameTrack is still doing this, if we'll see actually that number of gamers lift so it doesn't sort of plummet when you get to 15-year-olds. Because they will become the gamers of the future. So I think generationally we're going to see a lift, and we're going to see behavior where they expect to play across platforms and have that sort of unified experience. Okay, this is a bit of fun. This is an infographic, which is much bigger than this. I've just taken a small section. Over here was something I thought quite interesting. Places where people play their mobile games. Bed. I cannot believe 31% of people play their mobile games in bed. I thought it'd be TV. I thought TV would be the main one. What worries me a little bit is bathroom. And we all know what that means. No one's going to sit in the bath playing it, so they're sitting somewhere else. 11%, almost just over 1 in 10 of us, sit in the bathroom playing games. That's the sort of joking at. The serious note is, as you're developing your games for these, mobile games for these devices, it's the context. Where will my game be played? It's not going to be played in front of the TV. It's not some big immersive experience where you get the popcorn in and you sit down and you fire up your Xbox or your Sony and you spend hours and hours. It's nothing like that at all. This is what I call coffee break gaming. It's that snacking, that's opportunity just for those 10, 15 minutes, maybe in the bathroom slightly less, to play a game. So that's important as you think about your game design. Where is my game going to be played? According to this, 1 in 3 in the bed. 1 in 10 on the toilet. Anyway, there we are. So that's some of the stats. I've thrown them at you quick and fast. As I've said before, they'll be available after this, plus the entire deck, so you can look at them in more detail and take what you need. These are important, though, because absolutely creativity and design is key with gaming, but don't forget, ultimately, you want people to download, hopefully pay. To do that, you need to think about, where is my target audience? Where do I need to be? Where is it I want to put my mark? And that's where these types of things are great. So that's that. Let's talk about the journey that I've been on in the UK. First things first, let's address a few what I call elephants in the room. Let's get them out there. And these are the ones that I have heard over the last 8 months. First one, you don't like indies, Microsoft. We went to develop last year, as I mentioned. I would say that the response was neutral to not very happy that we were there. We went in there naively wondering what reaction we were going to get. And that was the general reaction that I moved on one there. Microsoft do not like indies. I'm not here to comment as to why that might be. But what I will say is it's utter rubbish. I personally love indies, and you'll see shortly that being demonstrated, and AJ will talk to this as well, and so does the team that I work within. We love the agility, we love the creativity, we love the desire just to make things happen. It's just brilliant to be around. Next one, it's a closed platform. Actually, it's not. There's 2 ways of thinking about this, and I've heard this many times as well. First of all, what can we develop in? Windows 8, you can develop in C#, you can develop in HTML5, you can develop in C++ if you wish. There's a whole host of middleware vendors you can use, some of which are here today. It is not closed from a development perspective, development environment, and it's not closed from a store perspective either. It is exactly the same store dynamics that Android and iOS have. So the same approach to self-publishing. It is not the Xbox platform. That is an invite-only platform, as I'm sure you all know. But Windows 8 and Windows Phone 8 is exactly the same as the other stores I've mentioned. We have no consumer reach. Well, I won't talk to this in great detail because there's a slide later on which will obviously put that one to bed. Commercial terms for the devs are poor. Not true at all. So you probably know this, but let me just spell out the commercial terms for Windows 8. Up to the first $25,000, it's 70%, 30%, same as Apple, 70-30. After $25,000, it goes to 80-20, obviously in your favor. If you use your own payment platform, PayPal or any other platform, third-party payment platform, it's a 100% pass-through. We take no cut at all, and that is different to Apple because they still take their 30%. So actually, the commercial terms are just as competitive as Apple and Android. In fact, if you use your own payment platform, even more so. And then the final one, and I hear this constantly, you don't have 700,000 apps in store. I can't argue that, we don't. That, to me, is a good thing, because if you want to be discovered, you're going to have a far greater chance coming to Windows and Windows Phone than you will going into a 700,000 app pool. So I'm always surprised by that. And in fact, I sort of think, well, how many apps are you actually going to install out of that 700,000? Probably less than a couple of basis points of apps. So they're the typical things that we hear. Let's talk about the opportunity, and I'm going to do it by way of an example. It's not a gaming example, so forgive me. So I'm sat down a couple of weekends ago with the Xbox on, with Smart Glass. I don't know if any of you have installed the Smart Glass app onto your devices. With Smart Glass on my Surface tablet and on my Windows Phone. My eldest child's got my Windows Phone. I've got my Surface, because I didn't just got it, so it's all new and shiny. And we're in Xbox Music. And we're deciding what music we're going to play to each other to try and educate each other about what music really is. So I think he was trying to play Flow Rider, and I was trying to play him Johnny Cash or something. But the great thing is, we were sat there, we were immersed in what we were doing, using the Smart Glass app to talk to the Xbox device from a tablet and a smartphone, and we were controlling the whole experience. And that, to me, demonstrates the power of the Microsoft platform, whether it be, in that case, music or games or any type of application. It's that cross-platform opportunity, yes, but secondly, it's that immersive and connected experience, which I believe only Microsoft can actually give. Okay, so I mentioned numbers. Lots of numbers up here. So these are fresh off the plane, if you will, from Mobile World Congress. So Windows 8 has sold 60 million licenses in the first 2 months of general availability. The general availability was the end of October. So for the first 2 months, end of October to the end of the year, 60 million licenses sold. Over 1,800 certified devices, OEM devices. You've seen some already. That's over 1,800, and that's only at this point in time. The number of apps in the Windows Store has quadrupled, with 10,000 added in December alone. We passed the 100 million app download mark just 2 months after GA at the end of October. So it's just 2 months, and we surpassed 100 million. And as it says here, in the first 2 months of the iPad launch, they were at 35 million, so significantly ahead of that. And then finally, we've seen double-digit growth in people visiting the Windows Store week over week over week since October. And that could only trend up. So there's some of the numbers. Right, let's talk about some of the experiences. Piece here from, you can see, Pocket Gamer. Mudvark are a small startup. They're a couple of students from Abertay. And they created a game using a tool called Construct 2. I don't know if any of you have used it or heard of Construct 2. It's a bit like Game Maker from Yo-Yo. It's used a lot by hobbyists and school children. So they built a game in Construct 2 called Mortamelon. They put it into the Windows 8 store about 6-7 weeks ago. And they put it in there, and they said this themselves at the event where they were quoted, expecting to get about 3,000 downloads. They did it more to prototype it, to test it in Windows, and then they were going to put it into iOS and Android. And they're expecting about 3,000. Over 200,000 downloads later, they realised that actually, perhaps we're going to stick with Windows after all. And now they're thinking about how to monetize it. So it's a free-to-play game, but they're now thinking of monetizing it through offering level packs. But they were absolutely amazed that we could draw over 200,000 downloads to their game in a space of weeks. So that's one example. And the other point to make there, is that is without any promotion. We didn't do any spotlights or anything. That's over 200,000 just with no promotional marketing around it. The only reason they got into Pocket Gamer is because they spoke at a Tiger event in London and were quoted. Then we come to a bigger studio. So that's a small startup, two-man band startup. We come to a big studio, which some of you may have heard of, called Rebellion. Very well known for Alien vs. Predator and, of course, Judge Dredd, which they own the rights to. This is a game they put out on Windows 8 and Windows Phone 8 called Guns for Hire. I don't know if any of you have downloaded it. If you haven't, I urge you to do so. It's a free-to-play, so it's free to download, and it's got in-app purchase. And ditto for Mortamelon as well. I urge you to download and play with that. Here's the interesting thing. So Chris Kingsley is the co-founder and CTO of Rebellion, and he went on record last week with exactly what you see here. So this is for Guns for Hire on Windows 8 only. Having analysed their data, they've seen that their worldwide average revenue per user on Windows 8 is 75% higher than the next best platform. You can all guess what the next best platform is. I don't need to spell that out. In terms of organic downloads, and what he means there is downloads that haven't been driven by any promotional marketing effort, 40% higher than the next best platform. Does that sound like a platform that's not actually going to bring eyeballs? I don't think so. Is it a platform that can bring revenue? Absolutely. Through the in-app purchase model that Rebellion has seen, they're happy to go on record and state that. All right, moving on. What I wanted to do was demonstrate by example the approach we've taken in the UK. And the easiest way to do that is to actually have a studio tell their story in their own words. I don't know if any of you have heard of Yippee Entertainment. They're based up in Manchester, Salford. They are a startup. Their first title out the gate is called Chimpact. I won't say any more than that because I'll let them tell their own story. Here you go.
When we started Yippee, we discussed what we wanted to do as a game, and we fundamentally self-funded until we got to a reasonable point where we could publish the game. We picked Chimpact because it was just the most appealing, funky idea. Our strapline for Chimpact was pinball with monkeys, and that just sounds fun.
The visuals are really important to us on Chimpact, so we looked at other reference like Pixar animations and Jungle Book. We tried to pull all that together, and we built 3D modelled worlds. We're really looking at the balance of the colours of the landscapes and how the lighting affected what you could see, and that was really important.
We came up with a number of ideas for Chuck. I sketched them out and provided a few ideas to the rest of the staff. Initially, he was supposed to be like a Evel Knievel type character. So he was supposed to be quite feisty, but he's ended up as a nice sort of round, cuddly character now.
As a company, it was important that we got to own the customer, as we were going to be publishing our own titles in the future. So we built up social networking on Facebook. Chuck the Chimp has got his own Facebook page, he has his own Twitter account, and gradually that customer base is growing. And it's so nice to actually be able to interact firsthand with the consumers.
We've always used the Windows as a development platform for PC, and having watched the guys using this as the development platform, from the back of my mind I was thinking, how do I monetize this? And at the time there didn't seem any kind of direct routes out to market for the product. We talked with various partners about things like Steam or maybe self-publishing from the website, but we didn't seem to get the right strategy together at that stage. And along comes Windows 8 with the store within it, and we thought it'd be an ideal situation given the brand's a brand new IP, it's a brand new platform, and we get massive visibility because we're out there on platform launch.
Windows is out there across every PC that's out there and tablet, and I think that it would be foolish to ignore it. It's a very attractive platform for us to develop, and as Evan said, it's in its early stages, and it's wonderful to be able to get in at the ground level.
Windows 8 now is much more friendly to a younger market, a simpler market, a casual market, and that's what we wanted to develop for. We had direct support from 2 guys at Microsoft all the time, and they answered our questions, pointed us to tutorials, relevant documents, whenever we needed them, basically.
The support we've received from Microsoft has been nothing more than astounding, to be honest, and basically the net result from that is what we see today, with us at #1 in the charts in the UK. There's not much else I can say as part of evidence of the kind of effort the guys have put behind us with Chimpact and the rewards it can bring.
Wrong button. Let's try again. Okay, so that's Yippee. That's their game Chimpact. And again, if you go out of here, if you've got Windows 8 or Windows Phone 8, because it's on both, I implore you to download it. It's only 99p. It's the best 99p you'll spend, trust me. What I wanted to talk about is some work that we've done with them to help promote the title. Why Chimpact? Well, actually, it was simply this. Mike Dells, who you saw there, the CEO, sent me an email just out of the blue. I think he saw me at another event and just said, oh, we've got this game, Chimpact. It's been on iOS since August. We'd like to put it on Windows 8. Could you have a look? So I had a look. I said, love to see it on Windows 8. I can see already it's going to absolutely look beautiful on a Windows 8 device. Took it home on an iPad to let my kids play, because they're better field testers than I am. And this is what clinched it for me. My youngest child, who's 8, said, after 5 minutes of playing it, in his bed, surprise, surprise, 31% as we saw earlier, said, Dad, this is better than Angry Birds. And I thought, well, if he says that within 5 minutes, then this is obviously a game that we need to do a little bit more with. And it wasn't just the game itself, it was actually Yippee as well. They got a great backstory. You know, they are industry veterans, I think between 15 and 25 years in the industry, but they've come together to form Yippee Entertainment. And they put all their effort, all their investment into this title, Chimpact. So there's a great story there and a great game. So with that, I constructed, still am actually, it's still rolling out, started in February, going through March, a whole marketing push. And for the first time, a marketing push, not just in the UK, but actually I got the US on board, I got France on board, Germany on board, and they're pushing it as well. And China are coming on board soon. So what did that actually look like? So the Windows Phone and the Windows 8 product groups, marketing groups up at Corp and locally, help secure spotlights and panoramas on the devices for Chimpact. And we know how effective they are as marketing tools, because if you look at the reporting, at the point of spotlight or a panorama in the case of phone, you can see a spike in the downloads. They absolutely are one of the primary drivers of downloads on the store. I retained a PR agency who specialize in the gaming industry to work directly with Yippee and effectively act as their PR agency in promoting the game. And I'll come back to that shortly. Blog posts, so we have Windows Phone blog posts, so they blogged about the game, and Twitter feeds and Facebook, of course. MSN have run and will be continuing to run features on Chimpact and Yippee. TV, I'll come back to that in a moment. Celebrity reviews, so Jonathan Ross is just getting a device right now with Chimpact on, because he said he wanted to review it and then obviously post his review, which is great. Xbox, not that it's going on Xbox, but they have pushed it out to their subscriber base. They have 4 million subscribers in the UK on the newsletter, 1.7 million on Facebook, so they're pushing the game there because they feel it's of interest to their gaming audience. Internally, and actually this shouldn't be underestimated, a key part of the success that I've had here is actually internally raising the profile of Chimpact, to the extent that one of the most senior folk in the Windows group in Redmond said, this is the best looking game I've seen on Windows 8. And then I mentioned earlier the multi-country support, so pushing not just in the UK, but in those other big markets as well. So what's been the output of this? Two things I wanted to really highlight, lots of output, but these are the two things to date. You probably can't tell. This extract up here is from the Sun newspaper, not something I read that regularly, if at all. But on Friday, a couple of weekends ago, in their weekend special, they did a review on Chimpact. It was just below the Colonial Marines review. And they also did the online review. Just to put some numbers on this, I didn't know this, and then I found out. It's just under 8 million read the actual paper in the UK. Over 27 million read the online version. They're the biggest distributed paper in the UK. They're the 10th biggest in the world, which I didn't know. So it's massive profile. And bear in mind, this is a startup studio with their first game out, and they're being reviewed with Colonial Marines, which obviously at that time was the big release. That's one thing. The other thing, though, which I loved, is this is what the journalists said. And we had no editorial review. This was absolutely editorial, not advertorial. Though the iPhone and iPad understandably have a stranglehold on the market, some games are actually better on other platforms. Chimpact is an example of that. And then he goes on to talk about how it, on the Windows and Windows Phone platform, it comes to life over and above the iOS version. And one of the main reasons he talks about that is on the Windows version, it works both in landscape and portrait mode. And because it works in landscape mode, Yippee were able to add in far more detail on the left and the right than they were on the iOS version, which was portrait only. So that's for Sun. They've had lots of other coverage. Hopefully Jonathan Ross will give a glowing review, and we'll see what comes from that. The final piece just on this slide is we managed to secure a TV slot for them with the Windows Phone ads, which are running right now, certainly in the UK, over February and into March. This is the latest Windows Phone ad with a lady called Holly Willoughby, who I don't know if any of you know, who's a TV celebrity. So we'll just queue up this short ad, and you'll see Chimpact on the start screen. Thank you.
For someone off the telly, I'm rubbish at the celebrity thing. My phone is just full of wallpaper samples. It's a who's who of tilers, painters and decorators. Fame might last for 15 minutes, but a good plumber is for life. Please think I'm nearly here. That's me, and this is my Windows Phone.
New Windows Phone, reinvented around you.
Excellent. So you might be there thinking, great, so all this is going on. What's the impact in terms of downloads and revenue? At the moment, frankly, I don't know. We're running this till the end of March, as I've mentioned, and then we're going to spin up a load of reporting and see exactly that. What impact have we had on the downloads they were seeing before all of this, and obviously on the conversions from trial to paid. But one thing that it did do, if my clicker works, nope, it hasn't come up. Not to worry. One thing it did do was it put them at the #1 spot as the top paid app out of all apps in the UK, displacing Angry Birds Star Wars. And I think it showed that in the video as well. So that's one tangible outcome we saw very quickly, was it shot straight to the #1 top paid app of all apps. And obviously they were very pleased about that. That's fine. So that's Yippee's experience, and that's Chimpact, and hopefully that was helpful in terms of how we look to work with indies. What should you take away from that as students? Because, of course, you can publish into the store, and I'm very happy to hear from students, as I am from game studios. The key thing is introduce yourself. If you're the best kept secret, that's exactly what you'll remain. If we don't know that you put a great game into the store, then how can we go in, have a look at the game, and make a judgment on whether that's something we want to work with to promote? And that's exactly what Mike did. As I said, he dropped me an email out of the blue and just have a look at this game. And that's not to say that every single time you send a note to someone in Microsoft, they're going to go, yay, this is the next great game. Of course not. But if they don't know about it, there's no way they're ever going to have that opportunity. So that's #1, and that's very key. Next thing, and Yippee have been brilliant at this, the only way that I've been able to put all this marketing effort behind that particular title is that they have been fantastically responsive to the requests that I've made. For example, prior to the promotion, Chimpact was priced at $279, so there was a trial option. You got X number of levels, and then you had to purchase at $279. based on feedback from both the US teams and also my team, the UK team, they dropped that price to 99p for February and March, because we said to them that at that price point, you're hitting into the Xbox Live territory, the Xbox Live games on Windows 8. And that's tough for an IP that no one knows, from a studio no one knows. And they took that and they instantly dropped the price to 99p. So there's an example of the responsiveness. But over and above that, you may have seen on the video, they've designed a competition to support the campaign where any member of the public can design a member of Chuck's family, Chuck being the monkey, and that design will go into the Chimpak game. And they're running that competition in both the UK and the US. And there are other examples. The point I'm making here is they help us with this, because all this helps me then promote them, and they do it quickly. And that's the thing here. It's about speed of execution and speed to market. And this sort of goes to the third point. Be open to recommendations from the vendor, whether that be Microsoft or any other vendor. In many ways, they should know best what's going to work on their platform, and they should know best what's going to work for their customers. It's not to say that you have to do everything they say, but certainly listen to what they say. And if it works for you commercially, and they feel it's going to help them promote your game, then it's obviously a marriage made in heaven. This is an interesting one. Don't ask for money to develop. 2 reasons. First of all, there isn't any. I have no money to fund development. I have money to fund marketing, but not development. And secondly, it sets the wrong tone, because it implies to the vendor that actually all you're looking for is just a paycheck to get your game built. And it doesn't set the right tone. So I'm not speaking here for the other vendors, I'm just speaking for Microsoft. And then finally, and this is probably the most important, which is why I've put it last, and I'm going to do a quick little Josh thing here and ask you to put up 4 fingers. And this is for anyone that is a startup or plans to be a startup studio. So you put 4 fingers up. If you count down those 4 fingers, there's something I want you to do. So first of all, if you're a startup right now, are you less than 5 years old? If you are, then drop 1 finger. Secondly, are you turning over less than $1 million revenue a year? Drop down your 2nd finger. And if you're not, then I'd love to talk to you. Thirdly, are you producing software or technology as an output? Plainly you are, because you're developing a game. And then finally, are you privately owned? If you have no fingers left, you dropped all 4, you need to sign up for BizSpark. So for those of you that haven't heard about BizSpark, it's a program that we run to support and incubate startups. And it basically gives you a number of MSDN Ultimate licenses, which in their own right are worth $16,000 each. I think you get 8, which means that the store cupboard to the Microsoft products is open to you to use as a business for 3 years. So that's over $100,000 of Microsoft product for 3 years to help you in those early stages of being a startup. In addition to that, you get free store registration, so you can register on the Windows 8 and the Windows Phone store for free. And you also get access to mentoring and technical support and marketing support and guidance. It's a fantastic program. There is absolutely no cost in signing up. It takes from anything from a day to a few days to be approved. You'd be nuts not to do it. Whether you want to develop for Windows or not is a moot point. If you're a startup, BizSpark, I think there's a desk up in the expo. I implore you to go and sign up and register for BizSpark. All right, so I think I've got about 8 minutes. Just to wrap up, crystal ball stuff, the future of gaming. Well, if I knew this, I guess I'd be probably retired on a tropical island. But for what it's worth, this is what I see and hear at all the various events and the studios that I talk to. And it's this. No, it's not containers, it's cloud. This is one of our data centers. I don't know where, might even be in Dublin, but this is one of our data centers. This is what the cloud looks like. If any of you have never seen the cloud, that's what it looks like. Containers full of computers. We roll them in, we plug in power, we plug in cooling. There you go, that's cloud. I didn't know that, but so why cloud? Because I think cloud gaming is the next big thing, and here's why. Cloud gaming traditionally has been seen as video streaming of games. That's how it's traditionally been seen, and I'm sure it will continue to do video streaming of games. The interesting thing, which I think will grow, and I think it will grow in the indie scene particularly, is the idea of cloud and apps working together. So I'm not technical, so bear with me on this. If you think about a scale, you've got 100% on the device or 100% in the cloud. Where you sit between that is entirely up to you. But theoretically, you could hold 90% of your processing power in the cloud and only 10% sits on the device. Now imagine how empowering that could be for your game. And it's depending on, it doesn't matter what device it then goes on. So what I've done here is capture the idea of what Cloud Plus Apps gaming could give you now and into the future as well. Number of things. So first thing I'd draw your attention to is my very poor schematic down here with the cloud in the middle. The simple idea is here. It connects all those different experiences and different devices. So whether it's television, whether it's digital video players, phone, tablet, PC, or indeed Xbox. Cloud unifies and brings those experiences and those devices together. That's number one. It plainly enhances the game experience. There's a whole host of things you can do if you're released from that native install on the mobile device and you utilize the processing power that exists within those massive containers that we saw earlier. It releases the game. It gives you far more opportunities to build a really immersive and hopefully monetizing game. It creates differentiation. We mentioned earlier 700,000 in the App Store for iOS, 675,000 in Android. How do you get discovered? This could be your differentiator, an app which is running on cloud. It drives engagement. Why? Simply put, there's a whole data analytics suite that sits on cloud, which is available to anyone that uses our cloud platform. And it tells you some pretty good stuff, but I'll come to that on the next slide, so I won't drive into that anymore. And it enables new business models for you. No longer are you just trapped to one platform or one device. With cloud, you can support all platforms, all devices, and have a game which is connected across all of them, which is just immensely powerful. The scale piece probably is more for MMOs. So the idea here is you don't have to build for the worst case scenario of X million people trying to use your game at one point in time. With cloud, you can scale up and down as the demand requires, which means your monetization matches your utilization of cloud. All right. So I mentioned about data. This is a slide I've stolen from a UK company called Mediatonic, who are past masters in this. They have built their whole business around the idea of cloud-based gaming. And in some ways, although it takes away some of the creativity and the fun, what they've done is they've taken a data-driven approach to their gaming. So in real time, they can adjust the game dynamics on the fly. So that means using the cloud data analytics, they can see where players are tripping up. Excuse me. They can understand where they're monetizing, where they're switching off, and so on and so on. And they can tweak characteristics in the game in real time to then see what impact that has. So that's a shortcut way of saying what you see on this slide. So imagine how powerful that is. A natively installed app where you struggle to get the right level of data above and beyond downloads and trials, and maybe if you've got in-app purchase, you'll see some data around the monetization, to something like this, where you can build and tweak a game 24/7 to drive retention and to drive monetization. That's hugely powerful and hugely enabling, which is great, because you might be there thinking, well, that's fabulous for the AAA studios and Microsoft studios. They can do this. Well, actually, you can do it as well. You can do it right now. We have a product called Windows Azure Mobile Services, which gives you authentication, so single sign-on authentication, Facebook, excuse me, Twitter, doesn't matter, single sign-on. You have push notifications, so you can push messages, communications, whatever you wish, to your user in real time. You have data storage, as I mentioned before, which then gives you the diagnostics, and then scale, as I mentioned before. Here's the interesting thing. It doesn't just support Microsoft Stack. It supports all of them. So you can sign up for Windows Azure Mobile Services and not even develop for Windows. You can take your existing game, for Android or iOS, and you can host it on our cloud backend and get all of this. So again, if that's something that is of interest, I implore you, encourage you to talk to the Irish team, and they can tell you how you actually use this. And interestingly, if you're on the BizSpark program, you get a certain amount of free as your usage. So even better, you can use this for free for a period of time. But maybe that's still a step too far. You can actually even use cloud in the most simplest of ways. So Chimpact, which we saw earlier, uses a feature called roaming data. It's 3 lines of code embedded into the Windows 8 RT. What it allows you to do is if you log onto a Windows tablet, say, play Chimpact, get so far, shut that down, and then log on to a different Windows 8 device, it retains your gameplay. That's cloud, because it's retaining it. It's using a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of cloud, but that is cloud. So you can use it right now. If you develop a game for Windows 8, use the data roaming feature, that's cloud. This is a review from the many hundreds that Chimpact has had. This is the first game I've seen that smoothly syncs your game progress between machines. For that alone, I rate this game 5 stars, and the gameplay itself is pretty neat too. So isn't that fascinating? They're not reviewing the game, they're reviewing the functionality of data roaming. So what does all this mean? It means whether you're a startup, indie, or whether you're a very well-financed studio, 343, bringing out Halo 4, you can use cloud. It democratizes gaming. You don't have to be a big studio. You can use cloud right now. You can lead the charge right now because you have the agility to do that, perhaps where studios take a little bit longer. Which brings me to the end of the presentation. So thank you very much for listening. I'm now going to hand off to AJ, and he's going to bring all the laughs. So thank you.